Are you tired of working with wood? Have you tried working with recycled plastic before? Today, I'm going to show you how to do two unique incense holders made from recycled polystyrene. This is a solid plate made from polystyrene. In particular, it's recycled from electronics and old license plate holders. You can get this from our friends at Marble Plastics. You can find their link in the description below. I don't have any affiliation with them, I just really think their material is really cool. Recycled plastic plates are an amazing material to work with. This one in particular is very sturdy. It can easily work the same as plywood or any other solid woods. And the amazing thing is just the view of it and the texture of it. It's really smooth and really easy to work with. In this project, I'll be making two different incense holders. As you can see, they're slightly the same, but yet they're different. I'll be using different manufacturing techniques just to experiment and learn the process of working differently with recycled polystyrene. The purpose of this video is to show you guys that recycled plastic can be worked with very similar tools that a woodworker or a maker normally has lying around the workshop. A big differentiator in this project is that I'll be using a hand router together with 3D printed templates or molds to guide me along the way in making perfect cuts. That way I can make clean, sharp edges and have repeatable parts. Let me show you a different approach with working with recycled plastics. Let's go. Before I jump into the actual build, the first step is always to plan out the design. I like to use 3D CAD software because it allows me to visualize the final product. As you can see, I'm making both the incense holder and the router templates at the same time. This allows me to visualize the manufacturing steps and foresee issues with the build. I'm doing the final checks on my router templates and I'll export these files and get them ready for the 3D printer. Here is the final result, two circular incense holders with different heights to give them unique looks. For the miter saw, I'm using a 12-inch diameter saw with 100 teeth and 1-inch arbor. Now, because polystyrene tends to melt easily when cutting, I'm removing material little by little to reduce heat buildup. We're going to start by cutting our plastic sheet into small squares. The goal here is to cut a shape as close as possible to the size of our outer circle. Now that we got our squares, it's time to carefully cut off the corners. I'm attaching the router template to the plastic hexagon with carpet tape. This holds it firmly but allows easy removal. Since the object is small, I'm using a piece holder to prevent any kickbacks. I'm using a 2-flute upcut spiral trim for clean edges and reducing excess heat. I do the same steps for both incense holders. Now that we have our preliminary round shape, now it's turn to use a hand router together with the 3D printed templates. This goes on right here with a tight fit. And the bushing within the router will help us remove all this pocket material. The idea is, within the router, I'll be using a bushing guide. So the idea is I'll be cutting using this as a permanent guide. It does not allow me to go outside the mold. The offset of the router bit is already included within the design of the template. This bushing goes here. So now, as you can see, the router has a bushing guide. So once I have the router bit inside it, I'm going to be using it manually, tracing whatever outline I have in my template. For the first incense holder, I'll be using this design. So the idea is to remove all the material on both sides, then turn it 90 degrees. This way I'll remove the material that was missing in the middle, and I'm going to be left with just a small square right in the middle. Once again, I'm using carpet tape to fix my incense holder to the table while screwing down the router template. When I saw plastic flying everywhere, I realized I'd forgotten to attach my vacuum. This material is dense, so it's crucial to remove small layers at a time to protect both your product and your tools. I'm vacuuming plastic buildup between router levels. This avoids plastic shavings from melting and sticking to the bit. After finishing one side, I rotate the template 90 degrees to remove the remaining areas, leaving a square in the center of the circle. For the second incense holder is way easier. This is the template I'll be using. The idea is I'm going to be removing all of the inside of the material, thus leaving me with just a simple plate shape. For the second holder, these steps are the same. The only difference is that the router template is a simple circle. No need to rotate the guide. These are the preliminary shapes of our incense holders. I'll sand them down to create a smooth surface. One has a square carved into it while the other is a simple plate. I've noticed slight asymmetry in the center square and along the inside edges. This is most likely caused by movement or deformation of the router templates. Here's a reason for my asymmetric cuts. So even though they seem sturdy, it seems like my 3D printed templates or guides are not strong enough to withstand the force of the hand router hitting it when I'm cutting the pockets. I'll just have to increase the infill for next 3D print. This next step is the most time consuming: sanding. Sanding polystyrene can be tricky since the sandpaper clogs quickly. To combat this, I'm using a little bit of water. I'll start off with an 80 grit sandpaper and gradually move up to a 400 grit. I'm also using a small file to round up the corners of the inside square. I make sure I gather and collect as much plastic dust as possible. For the second holder, I'll use a hand drill to speed up the sanding process. The plate shape lets me fit the entire sanding pad. Remember, slow speed, low pressure, and adding water are key to achieving a good finish when sanding polystyrene. Now we need to finish our second incense holder. For the holder piece, we're going to glue two small square pieces, creating a long rectangle. I've 3D printed a reference guide. This will help me make sure the rectangle is positioned correctly right in the center. Different from other thermoplastics, polystyrene can be broken down with solvents. This quality will help us create our own glue. We're going to mix polystyrene leftover sanding dust with pure acetone as our solvent. This will create a paste or putty which works great as an adhesive. After applying the putty, we clamp our parts and let them dry for 24 hours. Instead of waiting, I'm using a leftover piece from a previous project. I'll hand cut my long rectangle from this part. Since I hand cut the glued pieces, the shape isn't ideal. I'm using a file and sandpaper to refine the dimensions and obtain a nice finish. Next, I position my reference guide and apply glue putty to the rectangle. To finish, I clean off the excess with a toothpick. After several failed clamping attempts, I switched to rubber bands to secure the holder to the plate. The final step is making the holes where the incense stick will be inserted. I'm going to be using a 1.5mm drill bit. I'm not sure this is the correct hole, however, it is the smallest bit I have. Again, I must drill little by little to avoid the plastic from melting. At the end, I'll just check to see if the incense will actually fit. When working with plastics, it's crucial to mark them for easy identification. This will help the end-of-life recycling process. Since this is polystyrene, we'll use the recycling symbol with the number 6. To mark it, I'm heating up a marking coin from precious plastics using a heat gun. Once it's hot enough, I'll press onto the surface and leave a permanent mark. Before showing you the final product, I want to mention that I do my best to clean up and collect plastic debris. It's an ongoing learning process as I explore new ways to reduce and recover plastic particles. And here we have it, two slightly different incense holders made from recycled plastic. If you're a woodworker or a maker looking to try something new, I really recommend giving recycled plastic a shot. I'm always open to feedback and would love to hear any suggestions you have. Leave your comments on what products you would like to see next. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.